Hey everybody, Dr. G here. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist and body language expert, and today we're going to be analyzing the behavior and body language of Adam Montgomery. Adam Montgomery was recently convicted for the bizarre and horrific murder of his daughter Harmony. What we're going to be looking at today is his behavior and body language during his sentencing. Before we get started, a couple of quick things. One, I wanted to remind you this is not a psychological evaluation of any kind. These are just my opinions. In addition to that, I do want to remind you to like and subscribe if you want to see more content just like this. All right, let's go. So this is when Adam Montgomery just got in the courtroom. He's been sitting like this, basically staring ahead. He's got a very intense gaze. And he's somebody that wants to be in control. It's been very hard to get him in the courtroom. He's refused many appearances. This is one that he had to come to. But as you can see, he has a very strong intensity about him. We're going to look at more of the body language once the interactions start happening. But even his baseline is very intense. So you can see him leaning back already. Now, in a lot of ways, this is to show that he's feeling casual. You got to keep in mind, if he has not been showing up to these hearings, he's somebody that wants to avoid. He's somebody that absolutely knows that people are looking at him. So he's going to be thoughtful. He's going to be mindful about some of the behaviors he engages in. And right now, he wants to look relaxed. It also creates a little bit of distance between him and everything going on in front of him.
When you are ready, Attorney Gotti, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Now, one thing you're going to notice, as the other attorney's talking, he's trying to keep himself distracted. Watch this. And they had just told the other attorney to proceed, and you're already seeing his furrowed brow. He's trying to appear angry. So there's some of the behaviors that are involuntary and some that are intentional. I'm going to be distinguishing between the two, and I'll talk about the difference and why that matters as we keep going.
Your Honor, as you know, the defendant has been found guilty of beating Harmony Montgomery in July of 2019, guilty of murdering Harmony Montgomery, a child under the age of 13, and then transporting and hiding and abusing her body.
So he's trying to appear as though he's not paying attention to what's going on around him. So you have an attorney talking about what he's been convicted of. You can see him looking down at his attorney's papers. He's trying to keep himself distracted. He is somebody who wants to avoid. We've seen this because he's been trying his best to avoid as many hearings as possible. So as you can see, he's trying to engage in these avoidant behaviors right now.
Montgomery, a child under the age of 13, and then transporting and hiding and abusing her body and compacting her into smaller and smaller.
Now you see him flaring his nostrils and itching his nose. Now it could just be that he has an itchy nose. That's always possible. But it also is a way to try to make himself feel calmer as they're talking about the fact that he was convicted, as they're talking about all of the horrific things he did and trying to act and play off that he's not listening to that. It does seem that we're getting a reaction out of him right now. We're going to skip ahead to his reaction to some of the victim impact statements. Now we're only getting little bits of him. And the victim impact statements are really powerful, really important. So if you want to watch those separately, I highly recommend you do it, but that's not really part of the body language, so I'm not going to be analyzing that. So I do want you to watch his reaction after the first victim impact statement.
Your Honor, in addition, another member of Harmony's family.
So you could see he glanced back. He's trying to look, but also trying to seem casual at the same time. He wants to appear disconnected. And that's something, as I said, we're going to see consistently from him. Watch this right here. So you see a casual little glance up.
Your Honor, in addition, another member of.
And then he starts calming himself, because that's basically what we do when we're stroking a beard or touching our face. It's helping us feel calmer. There's lots of nerves there, so it makes us feel calm. So as he's doing this, he was feeling agitated from glancing up. Now he's trying to feel calm again. So as you can see, when he looked back, it looks like he's trying to make some kind of eye contact or at least get some direct gaze at whoever it is that he's looking at. He's got his eyebrows up. When you raise your eyebrows, that's a way to bring attention to your face. So in essence, it's probably meant to be a threatening look or a threatening gaze. Whether or not it was interpreted that way, I don't know. But I think that that's what the intention was.
Your Honor, in addition, another member of Harmony's family was Miss Brittany Sorey, her aunt. She would also like to address the court.
All right, and you could hear him smacking his lips together, because it sounds like the next person coming up is one that maybe he's agitated by having to listen to this. Something like victim impact statements, having to listen to victim impact statements for somebody that needs the amount of control that Adam Montgomery needs is going to be tremendously frustrating.
Miss Brittany Sorey, her aunt. She would also like to address the court.
And that kind of lip smacking, that kind of sound, that's meant to draw attention to him. He wants people to know that he's not pleased. Now, oftentimes there are behaviors that are involuntary. So I talked about voluntary versus involuntary, like rubbing your chin. While voluntary, while we have to voluntarily do it, we're probably not thinking about it when we're doing it. Something like this may be a way for him to actually express his displeasure. He wants people to hear what he's doing.
Address the court. Is Ms. Kayla Montgomery. She has prepared a statement. We've submitted there. We will be submitting that to the court as well. It has been provided to the defense counsel. She has asked a victim advocate to please read the statement.
So it was just said that Kayla Montgomery has a statement that's going to be read by a victim advocate. So his reaction is based on that being said.
If the victim advocate could please state her name for the record, and also the Kayla Montgomery's statement.
You could see him vigorously rubbing his face. On the one hand, he actually wants people to see this. He wants people to know how restless and uncomfortable he is. On the other hand, it's also a way to soothe himself because he feels very agitated by the fact that he can't avoid this, that he's having to listen to these things, and that there was no way around it. And facing this, having to hear these things, this seems to be for him more than some people incredibly agitating because he really just wants to avoid it.
Heard from yet is with regards to a very young man. This is Harmony.
Now you can see him blinking over and over again after this statement was read. That suggests stress. So having to listen to that has really ratcheted up the stress. He's not as disconnected as he wants to seem.
Heard from yet is with regards to a very young man. This is Harmony's younger brother, Jameson. He lived with Harmony up until the age of 1.
And the blinking is really notable for him because if you watch him early on, like at the beginning of this, he doesn't blink at all. When he's focused, he has no blinking going on.
Your Honor, in addition to...
So this reaction is after Harmony's foster mother had some words to say. Now, you continue to see him stroking his face. This seems to be his signal that he needs to calm down because he feels so much distress, because he feels so frustrated by the fact that he can't get out of this.
Your Honor, in addition to those statements, the state is asking you to consider not only all of the details and the facts that you heard during trial, and not only as you would...
You can see him pursing his lips. This is a way to show that he's dissatisfied with his situation. It's a little bit hard to see, but as he's breathing out, as he's bunching his lips together, he's trying to show that all of this annoys him. He's also continuing to lean back, which is a way to disengage from what's happening. Even though he technically would be getting closer to the people providing victim impact statements, we tend to move backward when we want to get away from something that we're hearing or something that we're feeling, even if it literally moves us closer to it. So, as you can see, he continues to try to gain distance from what he's feeling right now.
In addition to those statements, the state is asking you to consider not only all of the details and the facts that you heard during trial, and not only as you would for any defendant, their criminal history, of which is laid out there and which this court is already well aware of. But we are also asking the court to take into account 2 additional charges which are still pending.
So as you can see right now, he's deeply tucking in his chin. Somebody like Chad Daybell wants to show their superiority, so he lets his chin go free. He puts his chin out high up in the air, puts his nose in the air. So he's somebody that has a lot of vulnerability, shows, look, none of you people can threaten me. I'm invulnerable to all of you. Whereas Adam Montgomery, he feels very threatened and vulnerable right now, so he's tucking his chin in. That's just a defensive posture that we have. It's meant to protect ourselves. You can see boxers doing this when they fight. Tucking your chin in helps keep you protected. So we involuntarily do that when we're feeling an intense amount of threat.
To take the defendant's murder of his daughter into account at the last sentencing for the other firearms, given that it had occurred before her death. But these 2 not yet tried armed career criminal charges.
You see him looking up through the tops of his eyes. This, once again, that's a look you're going to see on people who are feeling threatened and who also may be predatory. This is the sort of weird juxtaposition of these 2 behaviors, because tucking in the chin is keeping you protected, but looking through the top of the eyes like that can in some ways be predatory. So this is somebody who wants to strike right now. This is somebody who wants to basically attack. This is attack mode in a sense.
Charges, offenses for weapons belonging to Mr. Ewell and the high-point handgun should be considered to show that the minimum does not apply to this man. The court is already aware of the defendant's statements.
And you can see his brow furrowing a little bit. Now, I talk about involuntary versus voluntary. I think that he very much wants people to see that it makes him angry. So I don't think that's an involuntary reaction. I think he's doing that intentionally to let people know that he disapproves of what he's hearing right now.
This was subject to many different interpretations. The court has discussed this on different events.
Licking his lips. Having to listen to this, there's no way for him to block this out. So it's just the agitation is building. But I think that he doesn't want people to see that it's getting the best of him. So he's sitting there still. He's not really moving, but he's chewing on the inside of his mouth. You got to think about this. When people are sitting still, like when they are genuinely not moving, that is a way to hide. So as he feels this threat and he can't avoid it, he doesn't know what else to do other than chew on the inside of his mouth, do some of these things to try to soothe himself, or to try to sit still. That's another soothing behavior because it makes you feel like you're hiding.
Your Honor, one of the things that you saw during trial were the many different ways in which the defendant tried to conceal his crime.
So that looking up behavior, the stretching out of his neck, this is voluntary. This is where he wants people to see, I'm tired of listening to you. This is getting too long. I don't want to hear you talk about this. In some sense, it's a way to relieve tension because we do tend to hold tension in our back. But I think that this is also performative in a sense because he wants people to see. I don't want to have to listen to this anymore.
You saw during trial were the many different ways in which the defendant tried to conceal his crime, not just physically, but also with false statements and lies to others. Lies as to where she was, as to what had occurred, where it had occurred in the car.
You see that mouth twitch again. Once again, that is voluntary. I think that he's sort of clicking his mouth or clicking his teeth together or something like that. He's making a noise, and it's a way to show disapproval.
As to where she was, as to what had occurred, where it had occurred in the car, where he was at the time. Even lies, as you heard from some witnesses, as to whether or not he loved or cared for Harmony in the first place. You heard and saw the defendant try to sell his lies to anybody that would.
And now you can see his temple pulsing a little bit. I think he's clenching his jaw. The irritation is building. The anger is building right now.
Listen. And why does that matter? Because it's one thing to deny the charges that the state then.
One thing you really do have to consider is for somebody that would need this much control, somebody that could behave this way towards a child, I don't think most of us can conceive of the desire for that much control. It truly is beyond the scope of anything that most people feel. So in that sense, it's probably hard to relate to just how hard it is for him to sit and listen to this. He has zero control right here. He has no ability to change anything that's going to happen, and he can't control what the attorney is going to say. He's just going to have to sit and listen to it, and that is probably borderline unbearable for him. Now the defense is providing their final arguments.
And Mr. Montgomery, acting appropriate with his counsel's representation, was called heartless, immoral, and no remorse. Mr. Montgomery does not have to express remorse here for something where he maintains his innocence. It would violate.
You can see him nodding his head. He's really keyed into what the defense attorney is saying right now. He's really paying a lot of attention. And you can see his chin position is different. He's feeling more confident right now.
For something where he maintains his innocence. It would violate his constitutional rights against self-incrimination.
And after they said he maintains his innocence, he starts licking his lips. That's when we feel anxious. A lot of what I've talked about today is the stress and anxiety he's feeling because he's done so much around the mouth, and that's really what the mouth does. It calms us down. It pacifies us in a sense. So when you see him with behaviors around the mouth, it's going to be following something that is causing him stress.
Charge of homicide at his prior sentencing on the armed career criminal charges that he.
One of the things that's so interesting is how intensely he is watching his attorney. He is paying attention to every word, and not everybody does in these situations. And so I do wonder if in his mind, I talk about how much he needs control, if he really believes that he's going to get a lesser sentence because of these arguments, if he feels the need to really pay attention to this, because it really is surprising how much focus he has right now relative to what we've seen so far.
Adam Montgomery does not dispute the time sought by the state for abuse of corpse and falsifying evidence. The state has requested maximum sentences on that consecutive, and Adam does understand that it affected the investigation and that behavior affects justice in the court system. And he does not dispute the sentences requested by the state on that.
So right now, he believes that he gave something to the court by acknowledging this. So he's looking to the judge to make sure that was received well. I'm going to go through step by step and show you what I'm talking about.
That it affected the investigation.
So she's talking about behavior that affected the investigation. He's bringing his eyebrows up right now, trying to bring attention to himself as she's saying that.
And that behavior affects.
And now he's looking at the judge to see how that was received. I think he's hoping that because of this, he's going to get a lesser sentence, even though he's saying that, acknowledging that he's going to get sentenced for these things. He wants to get approval. So in other words, as she's talking about this, he's trying to bring attention to himself. He's looking for the judge's reaction because he thinks that this is going to make a big difference, I think.
Justice in the court system. And he does not dispute the sentences requested by the state on that. Co-counsel has reminded me of something, and again, this was something that was not in the sentencing memorandum, and it was last minute, and it is the stunt that was pulled by the state, and it is that plea offers, responses, negotiations are inadmissible, and I think that they are
You can see him looking at the judge when they said it's inadmissible. He oftentimes wants to see the reaction. Watch this right here.
These negotiations are inadmissible.
And you can also see his brow is furrowed. This is his way of trying to show that he does not approve of whatever it is that the prosecution did or the plea deals or whatever it is that was offered. So this is his way of saying, I'm angry about this, and then he wants to see if the judge has any reaction to what his attorney is saying.
And I think that they are inadmissible for any purpose, including sentencing. Certainly, I know in other cases, if I was to say the state offered something pretrial and now they're seeking twice that.
Now we're going to watch him actually receiving his sentence.
Difference to the value of human life is seen in so many of your actions in this case. In 2019, you beat Harmony. In the words of your uncle, her eye was fully black and blue like a raccoon eye.
You're seeing his chin tucked in again. He's back to that defensive posture, looking up through the tops of his eyes, keeping his chin low.
Is what he said. Your words, when asked, were, quote, I bashed her around the effing house. Your criminal history similarly reflects your extreme indifference to the value of human life.
So now you're seeing the corners of his mouth go up. It looks like he's feeling contempt right now. His brow is furrowing, which shows he's feeling angry. As the judge is reading this, I think he's really starting to understand that this sentence is not going to go his way.
Therefore, the court sentences you as follows. On charge ID 2027112C, the charge of second-degree murder, you are sentenced to the New Hampshire State Prison for not more than life nor less than 45 years. That sentence is stand committed.
So right now you see him averting his gaze. And this is a way to go back to that avoidance as much as he can. He doesn't want to have to look at the judge while this is being read. He doesn't want to have to face these things. So right now he's trying to disengage physically as the judge is reading out the sentence.
Not more than life nor less than 45 years. That sentence is stand committed. That sentence is consecutive. All of these sentences, I should say now, are consecutive to each other, as well as consecutive to docket 216-2022 CR 5.
Back to the defensive chin, and his eyebrows are up because he wants you to see his disapproval.
Then, which are the sentences that you're currently serving. Additionally,
so we'll go ahead and stop here. The reactions you're seeing from him, it continues to be the same as this laundry list of charges is read out, as his extensive sentencing is being read out. He basically is trying his best to avoid it because he has been trying to avoid aspects of this entire trial. He tried to avoid showing up. He did avoid showing up many times, and he's tried his best to avoid showing up to hearings whenever he could. At times, he seems to want people to see how unhappy he is. But at the same time, he is constantly trying, like he's doing right now, to manage all of this stress and frustration. It all goes back to what we talked about before, which is that he wants to be in absolute control. Anybody that can engage in the kinds of behaviors he has wants to be in full and absolute control at any given time. And in a situation like this, he has none. Fortunately, this case is finally coming to a close, and there was justice for Harmony. Truly, this was one of the more awful and horrific cases that I've covered in a while. Hopefully, this has helped you better understand some of the behavior and body language that we saw today. If you have any other thoughts or there's anything else specific you'd like me to analyze, please let me know in the comments below. Last thing before we get finished up is I do want to remind you to like and subscribe if you want to see more content just like this. All right, thanks for watching.